Hi there. Today I'm taking a look at a Napa Valley classic. This is Stags Leap Winery's Napa Valley Cabernet Sauvignon 2018. And Stags Leap, incredibly well-known name, but not the simplest name to understand because it has a number of iterations. So this is Stags Leap Winery. So Stags Leap with an apostrophe after the S, meaning the leap of more than one stag. There is also Stags Leap Wine Cellars, which is Stag apostrophe S Leap, so the leap of a single stag. They also make Cabernet Sauvignon. They're also from the Stags Leap district of the Napa Valley. And then you have the Stags Leap AVA, which has no apostrophe at all. So you have to be very careful to read the small punctuation, not just put small print. I suppose this is contentious because in 1976, Stags Leap Wine Cellars, not winery, so not this wine, their Cabernet Sauvignon was the victor in the famous Judgment of Paris tasting in Paris, where American wines proved that they were the equal of the best in the world. And that's obviously brought a certain amount of fame. But at that stage, both Stags Leap Winery and Stags Leap Wine Cellars were producing, and there was a lot of confusion, and they went to court over it, which is why it's very clearly defined as to where the apostrophe must be in the two names. That was the resolution of that. And in fact, both wineries subsequently opposed the creation of the Stags Leap AVA, because I suppose it would have undermined their names and the individuality of that. Now, Stags Leap Winery was actually the first established. There have been, I believe, grapes planted there since 1872. Although, interestingly, this says that it's the first vintage was 1893. So, why would you take 21 years to produce your first vintage? I think simply that they sold the grapes, because in 1892, Horace Chase, the then owner, started to create the wine cellars, the winery, by dynamiting a cave out of the nearby hills. So I think 1893 was the first vintage that he made from those, although wines had been made by other people previously, but not necessarily on the property. Also, to be fair, there was a period between 1956 and 1957 when the entire property fell into disrepair, and I don't think any wine was made. The manor house became derelict, and it wasn't until the winery was bought by somebody called Carl Dumani in the 1970s that things were restored, and then in 1996 he sold the winery to Beringer. Beringer subsequently became part of Treasury Estates, and they are the current owners of Stags Leap Winery. The other thing to say is that this actually isn't a wine from Stags Leap. It's a Napa Valley wine. It doesn't claim to be from the Stags Leap AVA. This is because they produce this wine with fruit they buy from growers. They describe their choice of fruit as being from valley floor sites in the cooler southern half of the Napa Valley. Now, Stags Leap is towards the south. It's about 7 miles from Napa, the town itself. But I think what they're doing here is they're taking some fruit, possibly from Carneros even, but not necessarily cooler mountain Cabernet, which would be more expensive. So there's a certain economic trade-off going on there, I guess, but still, nonetheless, a wine that gets treated very luxuriously in the way it's produced. This is a wine that spends 3 to 4 weeks macerating, so there will be pump overs during that time to extract colour and tannin from the fruit skins. It's then run off into oak barrels, barriques, I presume, of which 37% of those are new. That's French oak, and one would assume, therefore, if about a third is new, that there's probably about a third second fill and a third older oak, and it stays in that oak for 20 months, so quite a long time aging in oak. The wine also isn't a pure Cabernet Sauvignon. It's normal for wine labelling to allow you to put a certain amount of another variety in there, and American law allows you slightly more leeway in terms of what you put in there. So this, I believe, is 81% Cabernet Sauvignon with 11% of Merlot. There's 4% of Malbec, 2% of Tannat, and 2% of Petit Verdot in there. That needn't be a problem, but that's just sort of building the structure of the wine using some other grape varieties that, I mean, particularly Petit Verdot, Tannat. Tannat will add tannins, Petit Verdot will add richness as well as tannin. Merlot will add alcohol and softness. So they're building this wine up quite carefully. So let's have a look at it and see what we think anyway. The first thing to say is the colour is really quite deep and dark. It's not quite opaque, I can just see through it, but it holds its colour very well to the rim, and there's a youthful purple note to the rim. The other thing is, even just swirling it slightly, it's staining the glass. It clings to the glass quite viscously. It is starting to show some tears. I'm not surprised at that. It's quite a tannic wine, and it's also got 14.5% alcohol, so we should have some viscosity there. Let's talk about the aromas then. It's a lovely fresh Cabernet aroma, sort of slightly towards the minty and eucalypt note, but all that's over really ripe dark fruit, ripe but not overripe. So we're talking about sort of ripe black currant, ripe black cherry there, not sort of the leafy cassis sort of note that you might get with a Bordeaux, but a much more opulent dark fruit there. There are hints of cedar in there, but the fruit is sort of overpowering that. There may also be a little vanilla, but that's all nicely harmonised with the fruit there. So let's have a taste. Again, there's a lovely opulence to that. You've got plentiful tannins, but that 20 months in oak means they're fine grained, but they're also really smooth. The ripeness is making them rounded. Again, that beautiful sort of dark fruit, dark cherry, black curranty, almost getting onto a sort of a more savoury black olive note, slightly sort of meaty, not bloody meat, but the alcohol is giving a roundness and a richness to this. This is medium to full-bodied quite happily. The tannins are very fine. There's a slight cedary note to them, but as I say, they're actually more bound up with the ripe fruit, and that's giving a chocolatey smoothness and a slight chocolatey nature to the mid-palate as well, flavour-wise. The wine has nice, fresh acidity. It's lifting. It's not mouth-watering. I wouldn't suggest that it was particularly high, but it's enough to keep the sort of the bright edge to that dark fruit, and that gives the wine enough to come past the alcohol and for the finish to last. What's actually happening is that the tannins and the fruit are combining really nicely to give a long, structured finish, and that finish is probably more on a sort of a dark plum, a sort of a damson bullis sort of note, than the sort of the earlier black cherry fruit. There's an almost sort of slightly velvety texture to it as well, but it is dark plum. It's not prune. It's not over mature. The freshness just allows those flavours to last really nicely. There are, as I say, cedary touches, but only touches. I think that's a wine that has the structure and the acidity to last very happily for another 10 years in bottle. That wouldn't be an issue at all. But I'd actually question why you'd need it to do that. I mean, the classic pairing for a Napa Cabernet is a nice juicy steak, and as this currently is with its sort of slight cedary grip from those tannins, this would be absolutely perfect with that. There's no need to age it further, although it would add complexity to it. So I think a really nice example of the sort of thing that you're looking for from Napa Cabernet. So yes, I hope you found that interesting, and if you did, do please join us and watch some more of these videos in the future. Thanks. Bye now.